Hi, I'm Samantha Swick, Chief Marketing Officer of the Americas for Inspera, and welcome to Exampertise. In this podcast series, we will be speaking with industry experts who will share their knowledge on the assessment challenges institutions and students are facing, with the thought leaders who are passionate about the digital learning evolution that is occurring, and with Inspera leadership, who are at the forefront of creating digital exam experiences that are shaping the learning environment, with each digital exam authored, delivered, monitored, and graded. So join us as we explore how to modernize the digital exam experience with Exampertise. Welcome to this episode of Exampertise. I'm joined with Besart Kunushevci, who is a Similarity and Originality Solution expert for Inspera within the Education Technology segment. He has more than 10 years of experience in developing a tool that has helped faculty and institution uphold academic standards through verifying original student work. Hello, Besart. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Samantha. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start by acknowledging that plagiarism is a subject that's on most academics' mind these days. So in today's conversation, let's discuss what the current landscape looks like, and from your perspective, what academics should be considering when navigating this important topic. How has the need for plagiarism detection grown as remote, online, and hybrid learning has evolved?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, because we have seen in the previous years, and especially with the COVID and the pandemics, that we had to transition to digital means and to virtual environments in a much faster way, which for most of the institutions, actually, it was a forced kind of decision to go into those digital and a virtual learning environment. And that's good. That's not bad, actually. We have seen that many institutions are continuing this hybrid model and continuing this flexible way of delivering teaching and learning for students. But also in this period, we have seen also a rise in academic misconduct, which came from different factors. And two most important ones are, first, the stress factor, and secondly, the lack of supervision that students had during that time. And if we talk about the stress factor, I think all of us have experienced that stress factor during the COVID and pandemic times, which, we thought we could focus more if, we don't have distractions, but actually in our homes, in our apartments, we actually had more distractions than going back to school. And that actually forced us to, in one way or another, when we couldn't meet our deadlines and meet our assignment deadlines, to turn to more alternative and creative ways of, submitting an assignment. And sometimes those cases are plagiarism, because we are not referencing the author, we are not attributing the rights or attributing the work that somebody else has done. And the second part was the lack of supervision. And the lack of supervision comes from different kind of factors, because first of all, most of the institutions weren't experienced in actually working with those digital tools or with these virtual environments as a first factor. But also it was, most of the institutions have a lot of students, and it was almost impossible for them to keep track of virtually everything that's happening within their institution. And in this case, there was also a rise on adoption of what they're called plagiarism detection software, similarity checkers, or different names that these tools have. Because in this way, educators had the check in place, and they could see what a student has done in terms of similarity. But it's very important to mention that not all similarity is also plagiarism. And that's why these tools help quite a lot to identify all potential similarities that are within a document. But then it goes back to the educator to make the final kind of verdict, whether that poses any academic misconduct, plagiarism, or cheating in general.
That's super interesting. What measures do you think educational institutions are taking to educate students about the consequences of their actions if they participate in plagiarism in these learning environments?
There are very good cases across the world where institutions put a lot of importance on teaching academic integrity, teaching originality, but most importantly, critical thinking. Because if we focus on teaching critical thinking, that we are kind of overcoming the two other problems. We are preventing them to happen. So many institutions decide like various different policies. We have seen like a huge shift from, just a declaration of honors to, plagiarism detectors due to their effectiveness, to be very honest, because a software doesn't lie. Like a software identifies whatever it found similar. But that, as I said, it's not always that it means plagiarism, but at least it equips the institutions with the right kind of insights, with the right information on taking that decision. And then we have seen like many even, let's say, conservative institutions that didn't believe that much in technology before, but through the pandemic, through this very rapid digitalization of their institution, they saw the benefits of using these tools, because by using these tools, it reduces the time for an educator to evaluate a writing, because they would evaluate it from a qualitative perspective. That goes, without saying. But using tools for integrity, like plagiarism detection tools and similarity detection tools, it actually helps educators identify those very specific cases that it has a high risk of being, let's say, plagiarized or posing any potential academic misconduct. So I think now we see the measures from institutions are shifting more into trusting technology and adopting it even every day more and more, because it basically does its job. It basically provides the information that all of the educators are looking out there to have in order to make a more informed decision.
What do you think are the most common forms of plagiarism that are being observed today in the classroom, and how are institutions adapting to detect and prevent them?
That's a great question. As I said, like during COVID, we became very creative. Like we started looking into very innovative and creative stuff, because as human beings, we are very creative in the way we kind of engage with whatever we do. So we had seen like, the previous decade, where people would just copy and paste stuff, like a direct copy from sources. I think that's a bit of the past, because everyone it's aware like how these detection tools more or less work, what they're capable of, and they try to kind of find ways to overcome them and to kind of, cheat the system, if I might say, in a word. So I think students, but writers in general, that tend to kind of copy things from other writers, they usually become very creative, using either like other softwares that do paraphrasing, or kind of just doing paraphrasing themselves, like bad paraphrasing, not changing almost anything there, just the word order, like the word choices, and mixing paragraphs, or going like getting different passages and sentences from different sources, it's called like mosaic plagiarism, which means you go and take it from different sources, different paragraphs, and then you use them in their own. But one of the most, I believe, one of the most widely used ways of trying to overcome or bypass these systems is using another software for paraphrasing and rewriting them. So most of the writers kind of go to that solution and try to change their text so it would not look almost identical like the one they copied, but at the same time keeping the messaging, keeping the same kind of, not word choices, but the same context in that regard.
So if I heard you right, what really evolved over the past few years is the students' attempt and processes they use to participate in plagiarism. Before, it was a direct copy and paste, and now they've gotten a little bit more creative by using additional technology tools to paraphrase, to almost filter the content through what they think is going to be enough change to be submitted, right? But the tools are catching up, right? Or if they probably have already caught up, in your opinion.
I mean, most of them do, because like we understand like this industry also has some players that are, in this business for almost 20 years. And sometimes that has its own benefits, like it comes with some benefits with brand recognition, credibility, and all of that. But then comes with some downsides, because you cannot be that innovative, you cannot be that fast-paced towards that. And that's why, we believe that there is a huge market gap that we need to fill in out there, because basically we saw that the evolution of these tools was going much slower than what the evolution of technology is happening out there. So our main goal or our main principle that we work upon is to constantly be on the forefront of these technologies, because in order for our solutions to be valuable by institutions, you need to evolve along the time. You cannot just build a software and expect that to work for the rest of our times, because 100% give it a couple of months and somebody will figure it out how it works and will find a way how to kind of bypass it, including our system. But the difference is that we evolve. Like, we cannot stay in the same place. We cannot keep a solution, for example, that worked perfectly last year might not be the best this year. So we need to be doing, updates and changes to our core algorithm so we can evolve along the way with these methods that are happening in the market.
So I think that's a really good transition to my next question. And it really involves the latest in what that evolution is containing, and that's artificial intelligence, right? And how AI is playing in the plagiarism detection space, and how it's being used to identify increasingly more sophisticated forms of plagiarism, right? So what do you think that is the role of AI is, both from a student submission side as well as a faculty and institution or technology standpoint of plagiarism in that regard?
Before I get into kind of the details of this, I must say, we are in favor of AI. We believe AI will definitely benefit the whole human race and the whole globe. But the point is that with every new technology, there are some downsides. And it doesn't mean that we need to stop the whole technology because it has some downsides. It's calling for people like me and other people to innovate and find, ways how to kind of solve these problems rather than ban them, what we see in the first weeks. And let's call them ChatGPT. So for example, like in the first early days of ChatGPT, we saw institutions not knowing what to do. We saw some of them banning, some of them, completely putting these very harsh statements, you cannot use them. But that more or less just showed that we didn't know how to cope with it. But once we gave it some weeks and some months, we understood that the potential of the benefits it brings, although without diminishing the fact that actually they have some negative sides to it. And this is also when it comes to play the idea of being innovative and innovating in these products, because today is going to be AI, tomorrow is going to be another model, the next week is going to be another model. This is constantly evolving as an industry, and it's good that it's doing that, because the companies cannot just be building a product and then sitting on the back looking at the money coming in and enjoying all of that. Because in this era that we live, we need to be competitive, we need to be changing every day, and we need to be okay with the change that's happening out there in the market. Things need to be changed in daily basis, weekly basis, and monthly basis. And AI has taught us that. I think we had another similar case just before AI, but it didn't get the same attention, which was translation as well. Like, once we got tools like Google Translate, DeepL, and the rest of the companies that do translation, then we started seeing, students who are bilingual or know 2 or 3 languages, they would turn to these translators, and they would translate content from one language to another. And actually, none of the systems were able to detect that. So I think that was the first kind of indication of the power of AI in terms of changing how academic integrity should be investigated and should be upheld. I think AI is one of the miracles of this world, in my opinion. It comes with some downside, but that's why companies like Inspera and the rest companies in the market need to address those downsides, because at the end of the day, we are here to solve the problems in education.
Super interesting. You're right. There wasn't a lot of conversation or even noise in the marketplace around translation. And with those tools available, it was really I would say a quiet time that I don't think most people connected the opportunity that students had to use information and submission, other students or other people's submission or work, and utilize those translation tools. So I could see how that was a great precursor for you to kind of warm you up to what was coming, even though you didn't know ChatGPT was going to come on the way it did. So with that, my guess is that in the ed tech world, and it's really all about data and analytics, right? And how closely you can use those algorithms to predict or to detect certain levels of original work. So how do you think educators and institutions are using that data and analytics from tools in the market to really gain those insights into patterns and to develop a effective prevention strategy around this subject?
That's a very good question. And actually here I'm going to be a bit critical to both ourselves and the rest of the market too, because the one thing that we have seen in this market is that we are very much focused to some metrics. Like we are in love with indices. Like we want to know a number and understand whether a document is, has plagiarism or doesn't have plagiarism. So we tend to very much focus on what number the software is giving rather than the context is giving. And actually, for example, I can talk more about, the report that we generate. And I've seen all of the other vendors' reports as well. But when we generate a number, we try to kind of not put a lot of emphasis on the one specific number we generate in the document, because we think that's misleading. And just to give an example, like for example, an essay or like an assignment research paper that has, let's say, 10, 15 pages, but you find sporadic similarities across the document. Some of them might be very, non-material. They might, it's very natural to say it in the same way as somebody else has said. So there are no big chunks there. But when you look at a similarity index, then you say, wow, this person has plagiarized. But the whole kind of magic of especially our tool is once you open the report. It's not the number, it's once you open the report, because when you go into the report, then the metrics kind of expand and the insights expand there. So we give for each sentence, we give very detailed information, how we found it similar, the source, you can compare them there, and then we classify those findings. And there are three main classifications that we provide for educators, which we believe helps them to make a more informed decision. So as educators interact with our software, we'll learn more on how our algorithms can actually behave in the future and what can they report as similarities. But also the similarity report, in our view, is one of the best learning points for both the student and the educator. Because once both the student and the educator have access to a report, interact with it, exclude sources, exclude sentences, go just to the core problems that document has, then the student is well aware where the problems were, what consists plagiarism, what doesn't consist plagiarism, and then they kind of improve as they see their feedback. Because just judging a student by a similarity score is something that I try whenever I talk to clients, is I try to kind of move them as far away as possible from that.
So I think two very important things to call out of your answer there. The first would be that tools provide insights, and the insights are just one piece to the puzzle that academic institutions and faculty really need to consider when looking at whether something has been plagiarized or if it's original work. And so that leads me to really say it's part of the process, but it still needs a human touch, right? It still needs a human to make a decision on the information that they have available and have a conversation with the student and get their perspective as well. It's really a more holistic approach than just zoning in on that number. The second part, which I thought was super interesting that you said, is that it's an opportunity for the faculty member and the student to really have a conversation, right? It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to develop. It's an opportunity to have the student more effectively understand those fine lines between when it's appropriate to use content and what you have to do in order to give proper citation, and when it's not appropriate, right? And so they have the opportunity to have that conversation and further develop students, which is really what the learning process is all about.
100% agree. And just to kind of expand in that, I think using these tools, we need to extrapolate all of the data in even higher levels, because it's not only enough to look, for example, to a specific document. That's why we have these analytical dashboards, which I can say, with huge pride, they're a true innovation in our industry. Like, no one else is doing this very high and detailed analytics in terms of academic integrity, because what's happening between faculty members and educators needs to be extrapolated and needs to be kind of analyzed at a higher level as well. So that's why we kind of provide very detailed information for each assignment, for each course, for each department, for each kind of institution, but also going down to individuals, like seeing from one educator what are the averages, seeing the same thing per student, because this helps us understand patterns, and this helps us understand better design of the assignments and the assessment process. Because if we see that we constantly, from a specific course, from semester to semester, we are seeing the same kind of, high similarity scores, we definitely need to have a discussion there. We need to discuss, like, what is the requirement from students? Like, what are we requiring them to write? Is that something that could be designed better? Or even seeing, from a very specific student, like if we see that somebody is constantly, uploading assignments and writings that have high similarity, that should be a discussion as well. Like, maybe something is going wrong with that student. Maybe it needs help on understanding what academic integrity is. So these information that happen, I would say, on the first layer, which is the educator and student, they are very valuable even for other decision makers and other people that get involved in designing a better process for students and faculty as well.
You're absolutely right. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. We didn't get totally into the specific Inspera solution that you developed, but in our next episode, we'll explore how Inspera Originality really addresses originality in student work and the tools available to assist faculty institutions with the task of academic integrity. So thank you, Besart, for your time today.
Thank you, Samantha. It was great talking to you.
Inspera has over 20 years of experience in the digital assessment solution space, providing institutions with a platform that supports the entire examination cycle. And it revolutionizes the exam experience while providing an easy-to-use interface, allowing students to demonstrate their understanding of a course's subject matter, which ultimately fuels the digital learning process. The views expressed by the participants in this podcast are their personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Inspera. Inspera disclaims any responsibility or liability for any statements made in the podcast by the participants.